Rage Badger Gaming here, and we're going to be doing another tier list today. This time, we're going to do a class tier list sorted by how fun and engaging they are to play. Of course, this is going to have some subjectivity to it, so if something feels out of place, do feel free to say in the comment section why you think that, oh no, this class definitely deserves to be on top. But until then, it's definitely Team Badger and our general opinion on how the classes are based on how engaging we found them to be. And some of the classes are actually pretty interesting to play, but we brought it down because sometimes it makes scenarios more tedious or too easy. We will be doing Frosthaven content every week, so subscribe if you want to be kept up to date on that. So let's just get into the list. We'll be doing it alphabetically, and I'll have a spoiler window before every class if you want to skip over it. So you'll have a few seconds to skip ahead. Angry Face. The Doomstalker is a solid meh, although some of the burst moments it has, which can do a lot of damage, sometimes in single target or in multi-target, and there's some cool options, and it kind of really relieves some of that annoyance with flame demons. Let's kind of be real here, the mechanic is very repetitive. You have the same turns, you use the same top halves a lot in between each rest, and ultimately the mechanics play very similar. It has no elemental interaction. It's fine to play, but it's one of those where everyone thoroughly enjoyed it who played it and then didn't want to really revisit it, and I think that's really telling on how fun a class is. Bareface or two minis. So the Beast Tyrant is another one we're putting in the meh, if only because the concentrated rage build is basically the best way to play in terms of raw damage. We actually have a more active build, which we'd put it either it's fine or fun, but a lot of your actions are entirely hinged upon the monster behavior, and a lot of times you're only playing half a card every turn, and it just feels like you're just doing the same thing over and over, even if you're doing a good job, because if you do the full bear build with concentrated rage, you can actually, in many scenarios, lead damage, depending on the other people that are in your party. But that also gives us the problem that you're just doing the same thing over and over. It's not very interactive. You've got very little elemental stuff. It could be a lot better. Continuing on the meh spree is the Brute. If the Brute had more cards involving like push and or like balanced measure, I think this could actually be a super fun class, but its balanced measure and immovable phalanx are two of the most fun parts of being the Brute. Honestly, I'd move immovable phalanx down to a lower level and kind of make a core card to build around instead of putting it so high. I think you can really make the Brute a way more fun class if you played it more around as like pushing, his moving and attacking, or turning moves into attacks, instead of pushing it off to late levels like that. I do think a perk redesign could also do them too, and I kind of am considering redoing all the perks of the starters in the Frosthaven format. So if I do consider, I'll put that as a patron poll if people are interested in that, and if the patrons vote for it, I'll go ahead and pitch my ideas on that. But until then, Brute, you're a solid meh. Continuing the meh train, because evidently this is the only rating we give out, it's the Circles. The Summoner is one of the ones I personally like. I do like to revisit it, but sometimes when playing it, it's a bit frustrating, and some of the other people on Team Badger just found some parts to be really fun and then a lot to be frustrating to deal with, and then constantly relying on monster behavior, burning cards just to like say like, all right, well, I want you to move and attack, but mostly I'm just playing this card so you can move to the right position because you're not doing the right shit I want you to do. Or watching some of your summons just completely run at the wrong thing and getting exasperated over it. Ultimately, although I personally think it's a pretty fun class, I do recognize that there's many moments that are unfun, and then kind of at later levels when you just have a cursed train, it kind of just becomes, it makes scenarios super easy. It has a super high damage ceiling overall, but it's not necessarily worth the effort that people find it such a fun class to play. And now we're out of the meh tier into the Cragheart, which is super fun. Honestly, I don't think I've seen anyone play the Cragheart without going like, oh shit, I want to do that again. He's got everything. He's got ranged attacks, melee attacks, healing, tankiness, and he puts so many obstacles, making enemies walk through his maze, and it's so satisfying to make a maze out of just all these rocks and watching them come single file through and then just kicking their ass after that. And those are the feelings where like, yeah, we want more interactive play like that. He has a little bit of elemental interaction too, which I always love, even though it's pretty minimal. You do actually get to focus on one element and you kind of feel like, hey, don't touch the earth, that's mine. And it's just a fun class to play overall. Not only that, but you have so many people. If you look online, there's definitely people on Team Cragheart. It must be so fun if they've got that. Also, evidently, if you look at his belt, it says Kyle. So the amount of Craigs and Kyles that are Craghearts are kind of a little bit astounding. But love the class, it's one of my favorites. It still is even after Frosthaven. Cragheart, keep kicking ass. Cthulhu is fun. So Cthulhu is one of those that it's very variable, but overall it's just great. Because if you're like, hey, oh, this room's gonna screw us up. Like, hold on, I'm gonna mobilize all this shit and it's gonna be easier. Oh, I'm gonna stun all this shit. Or hey, don't stand there, why? Because I'm poisoning everything and I'm gonna hit everything. And it's fun that you can kind of be like, don't stand in there, why? I'll poison you. It's like, no, there's no friendly fire. No, this will. There's a little bit of friendly fire, which is sometimes, you have to focus a little bit more on coordination. And personally, I think that coordinating with your allies is such a huge part of Gloomhaven, which is usually why I don't do too much Gloomhaven digital, because it's like, hey, I'm having fun by myself, but I really think that the social aspect really makes it that much better. Of course, there's Gloomhaven digital multiplayer, which we will be doing more of, but the Plague Herald has so much interaction with your party. It has elemental interaction as well. It has it's super fun of just watching enemies melt themselves with one of the best level 7 cards in the game. Like, it is just insane how much he can do and how fun it is to play. And plus, he has the Seeker of Zorn quest chain, which is the best unlock quest chain out of all of the classes in Gloomhaven. Demolitionist. It's not fun. This is kind of a boring class to play. If you port it to Gloomhaven, it feels like it's lagging behind. It needs a little bit more of a boost. It's got a really good attack modifier deck, which is great, but it kind of feels like you're doing the same things over and over. You want to try to knock things against obstacles or walls, and then you hit them while they're there, and sure. And you feel like you need a little bit more movement if you're playing it in Gloomhaven. Ultimately, there's a reason why you don't see a lot of people playing Demolitionist in Gloomhaven. Just doesn't translate super well, and it's, I don't know. None of us even feel motivated to even give it a shot in Gloomhaven again. It's, Diviner, we're gonna put it's fine. I think it's one of those that this is very situational. It's fine because in 2-player, in the original version, it just wasn't fun. You were playing an NPC escorting your other buddy. It's not great. And it got better with the update. Thank you, Marcel, you did a great job. But it's still in 2-player not super satisfying. And some people don't necessarily like the aspect of taking out some of that predictability. Well, I personally think that taking some of the predictability out and being able to say, hey, this is what's coming up, or hey, I'm gonna be changing it in this order, that requires way more strategy. And sometimes the communication you can have with your allies after getting this knowledge is way more fun. And that allows a little bit more interaction there. But that said, you have to take it into consideration of its whole, that's not for everyone. And that really only helps if you have 3 or 4 players, especially 4 players. So overall, we're gonna put it's fine, but this is one of those that's hard to rank and how fun it is, just because of you have many different styles of players and you have many different player counts, to the point where we personally think this is one of the more fun ones to play, but there are so many situations where it just feels like, oh my goodness, this is so tedious. Especially in some parts of Forgotten Circles where you really just need to bring some cards to get through the scenario, and it doesn't feel like you're bringing it because it's fun, you're bringing it because it's mandatory. That said, it's still a great class. Eclipse, boring. It trivializes scenarios, you just kill everything. Literally, you don't even draw attack modifiers half the time. You turn invisible, watch enemies just do nothing, sometimes for 2 turns straight, and then you just go, geez, this game's too easy. And really, it's just because of you can do too much fuckery with it. This class fucks with shits. Stop eating cards, you fucking goblin! Jesus, Spartak. it just makes scenarios too easy. Ultimately, it's one of those that maybe starts fun, but people just don't, our groups just tended to not like it very much for that reason. The Hatchet is one of our most fun class, and it is super fun. Why? You feel like a kleptomaniac. You throw your favorite hatchet, boom, but then you have to go get it again. Then you're like, I'm gonna scoop it up. And then you get a shit ton of gold because you're spending the whole time just looting, picking up your favorite axe over and over, and constantly people, hey, don't loot that. Don't stand on that hex. Why? I need to pick up my favorite. And most people are like, oh yeah, you need to get your favorite. That'll help our damage. Never mind. I'll let you have it. Yes, give me that coin. So, but seriously, Hatchet is one of the most fun classes to play. You have the double throw combo that you can use with like Fearsome Efficiency or Power Pitch that just does a shit ton of damage. Like, I'm gonna delete that boss right now, especially on 2-player where boss health scales so low. Even if you bring the Hatchet on like some of those really hated scenarios, like number 48, and you're like, oh no, we're gonna die. Dude, you can actually just kill scenario 48 in one turn with the Hatchet on 2-player. It's insane. Because his health doesn't actually scale as well as some of the other bosses, but we're not going to go into detail because that's spoiler territory. But like, Hatchet's just one of those where everyone's like, oh my god, I love this. And not only that, but he's got a huge following and a shit ton of memes. Honestly, if you go to the subreddit or the Facebook group and say like, wow, there's a lot of memes about the Hatchet, I think that says a lot about how fun it is. Lightning bolts. And it's another super fun here. So we've filled up all 3 of our super fun slots, and I've said that because I arbitrarily set the maximum at 3. So what does that leave us? So the Berserker is holy shit. Do you want to just cleave a bunch of crap in melee with you or even around you? Boom, kill it. Do you want to clear a whole room, flurry of axes? Boom. Do you want to stun stuff or hit stuff? Take a bunch of damage? I mean, it's so weird because you like run in balls deep and you've got like, hey, I've got Defiance of Death on, so I might die 3 times, but I'm going to be good. And like, what the hell are you saying? It's okay, instead of dying 3 times, I'm going to get 3 experience. And you just run in there. You get so fucking emboldened by some of this shit. And you're like, hey, I know I'm at 4 health, but I'm going to take 2 damage. Like, dude, you're going to die. Don't worry, I'm good. It's just so fun to play. It's got such burst damage, and it's a little too powerful. Honestly, I think this is one of those things where when we've been playing Frosthaven and we've been playtesting that, I think the Berserker is a little bit too ahead of the curve, and a lot of the Frosthaven classes are going to lag behind because we're taking a little bit more delicate balance this time, and I know it's too good. But this one, despite being too good, is still super fun to play in the process. And that's one of the things that's hard to do, is to make something really powerful, but also make it really fun. And the Berserker is the epitome of power and fun. Mindthief. Mindthief's fun. Honestly, despite just using Mind's weakness over and over again, you're going like, wow, that's a bit tedious. You've got a bunch of stuns. You've got your little tiny rat. You run in. You've got plenty of things to loot. You've got plenty of things to invis, but unlike Eclipse, you do it in a fun manner. You're not constantly going invis. You only have a few ways to turn invisible, and it's actually kind of, at least it's neat when you do it instead of just constantly having, I don't know. There's something about it that just it makes me feel it's more interactive with the Mindthief, even though there's a couple ways you can screw with it. But most of the time you're just like, hey, I'm gonna hit that hard and do a stun. Hey, I'm gonna hit all these guys in range. Hey, I'm gonna mind control that shaman and it's gonna do something for us instead. It's just really interesting how he has such diverse toolkit, and it's just super fun to play. Not only that, but it's got a fan group too, although in all of our groups, the Mindthief got a little bit maligned from scooping all the coins, although that's primarily because we didn't have any Scoundrels. I think we'd probably have a bit of it there. But this is one of those where I personally think this is one of the better designed classes. I think that what I really change about it is change the augments to make the other ones more desirable, or maybe tone down Mind's weakness. But ultimately, we need more classes designed like this. It's super fun, and I mean, go, rat. Music note is meh. I'd put it up higher because sometimes the attack builds where you can just boom, hit a lot of stuff hard or hit a lot of area of effects or use the summons to use your insane attack modifier deck is super fun. But a lot of times you're saying, hey, I'm not doing anything this turn, but nor are those enemies. You're not drawing attack modifiers, they're not drawing attack modifiers, nothing's happening, and okay, we got through the turn. And there's a lot of that going on. And it ends up just sometimes being a relief when you retire because you're like, oh man, we kicked ass. But I want to try something new now. And I think we can't really give it a fun rating in that case. So I think it honestly almost takes away a little bit of fun, but there's a little bit of there is a lot to go on when you're like just tossing out curses and stuns, so it's not boring, but I think it could use a lot more if it was just toned down a little and had a little bit more interactivity. I like, you know, Disorienting Dirge because at least it gives them disadvantage, but there's just way too many ways to throw in curses with that same class and also impose disadvantage to the point where it just feels like enemies can't do anything. Redguard. Redguard is fine. I personally think it's fun, but some of the other team members think it's just fine, so we're going to leave it there. Not only that, but sometimes if you're playing a more of a shield spiky build that just kind of bounce damage back, you're spending more time just retaliating at a static number of damage and maybe less time actually doing all your attacks and heals and stuff. So, but it is still fun because you have a variable number of shields. You can say, hey, I'm going to consume this element to get more shield and so on and so forth. So it's not completely entirely out of interaction. You have a few elements you can operate with, because like the 9th level card has wind interaction, but also you have fire and sun through all the levels. So between all those elements that you can do, it's really just a great class because you have that and you need to communicate, hey, don't take fire. I'm going to need it for this round. Hey, I'm going to get ahead of everyone so I can, you know, take some hits. But ultimately it's a pretty rudimentary class to play, and I think that's holding it back, but I think you could have beefed it up a bit, but we're going to leave it at it's fine. It's not super fun, although it's enjoyable, but there's definitely some plays where it just feels like, okay, this happens, let's get to the next turn. It's still fun. Saw is fun. I've yet to have anyone play a Saw without turning it into some crazy madman. And it turns into some madman medic hybrid thing, and it's great. So you've got the ability to just turn any attack you have into a big whirlwind of death. So hold back the pain, and all of your cards that give you good attacks don't have a great initiative. You're going around the middle and it's unpredictable. Am I going to get it off before maybe they step out or do something or pop a shield, or who knows? No one does, but it's going to be fun because you're like, well, if this fucks up, I'm going to be pissed. But when it goes off, it feels great. Not only that, you can dump a lot of stuff into power potions and any number of spoilered items to just turn some of these big attacks into huge turns. So he has really great potential. I did meme its power level just repeatedly because there was a negative reaction to the fact I considered just to be an okay class. And to be honest, it's one of those things where I do think it's one of those that's pretty outclassed by other melee classes or support classes. So, I mean, it's not necessarily great, but that doesn't mean it isn't fun. It is super fun to play, and every time we've had someone play this Saw, they think, man, that is a fun. Scoundrel. It's fine. It's one of those where you're focusing a lot on flanking buddies, you get to steal a lot of coins, and it's great. But ultimately, the gameplay, the fact there's so many cards, like, hey, is there a thing next to it? Cool, I stab extra hard. Hey, is there a thing next to it? I stab it extra hard. Gets tedious. That said, the smoke bomb combo is super fun for killing bosses. I know everyone we play with seems to love that. And there are some cool stuff you can do later with invisibility, trickery, and some of the other fun stuff to the point where it gets out of that little tedious zone, but only a little bit, and it's got that annoying Visage of the Inevitable, which is a little too powerful, really. But yeah, it's just one of those non-lost kills are just too powerful anyway. But yeah, this class is one of those. It's fine. It's got some good stuff, and then it's got some tedious stuff. But ultimately, we're gonna leave it there because the fun stuff that it does have does bring out the tedium to the point where we think this is perfectly acceptable. Spellweaver. Spellweaver's fucking fun. I know that one of the best parts we love about it is just being able to blow up a lot losses and just go boom and just do a lot huge high impact turns. But yeah, so you've got those low impact turns, which are fine because you have those high impact turns, you get reviving ether, and then you do it all the fuck again. Oh my goodness. So this is super fun to just play. Now I know you can start doing the cold fire spam, which isn't as fun. It gets a little tedious there. So honestly, it's one of those that personally our group would probably put this in super fun, but there's this like middle level, like because you don't have Inferno, or you stop playing the heavy losses because the losses don't scale so well. And ultimately there's this kind of lull zone that we think that it's going to keep it out of the super fun tier just because of that. But everyone in our group, Stephanie actually went back to play this again. We've had so many people just have good interactions with this, and ultimately there's just a lot of enthusiasm about the class, and at least especially early levels, which is great because you get this class as a starter that people get so like, oh my goodness, this was so fun to play. And I think that's a really good design for a starter, and it's such a fun class to play. Sun, one of my favorites, is fun. Now, this is one of those because it can do everything and whatever you need. It doesn't necessarily have the most engaging gameplay. You're gonna say, hey, I love light, and I'm just gonna keep bouncing it up, down, up, down, up, down, and it's gonna be amazing. And you're gonna be great, and you're gonna be powerful. But you can play some super tanky stuff, which is great. You can play support. Honestly, you can bring dual purpose stuff to like so many scenarios. I'm gonna hit really hard with advantage, and it's great because you're rarely ever missing because of that. It's just so fun to play because you feel like you hit hard, you feel like you're tough, you feel like you can be on the front line in a game, in Gloomhaven, which is a game with a history that's just like, hey, you have to play carefully. You don't need to be as careful with this class. Run forward, stun crap. You have such a fun toolkit that it feels like you can do everything and you just feel very powerful. Three Spears is fine. So the Quartermaster has a problem where it's super fun, it's fine, meh, and it's really tedious. So there's some turns where you have multiple turns in a row where you're like, man, I did nothing. And then you have some turns where you're like, dude, I just won the scenario by myself, fuck all of you. Then you've got like, hey, I've got this combo where I have infinite stamina. Oh yeah, don't worry about looting. Why? I'm gonna get everything on the way back because this scenario, it's so frustrating to just see a class that kind of breaks the rules of the game. And that's what this guy is. That said, some of the cool stuff you can come up with is super fun. Unfortunately, you have to take everything together. You can't just say, hey, dude, this super scenario was just so fun and I loved it. Yeah, I'm sure. There are some scenarios where it just feels like the greatest class ever. But then sometimes, I swear, we moved on from this class every time thinking, I'm glad that's out. Like, it sometimes takes away the fun from others. And sometimes we've actually had it to where people were like, all right, that was too broken. Let me move on. And yeah, I mean, sometimes you'll have that. But overall, we're gonna say it's fine because despite being powerful, a lot of people get some fun combos, especially new stuff. I love like the tank Quartermaster build, which is like, hey, I'm not gonna do any bombing, I'm just gonna run in. There's really fun stuff you can do with it that's just not completely broken. And I kind of encourage people to try new things and just go in, instead of like, hey, I'm gonna throw bombs and kill shit, which is great, but there's other ways you can play it. Tinkerer, it's fine. Honestly, it's one of those where this class can do so much. It's the toolkit is fun. You're like, hey, we need to kill that thing over there because that cultist is going to keep summoning more stuff and it keeps healing itself. No, hold on. I'm going to hit it because I can hit it from range because Tinkerers can, and I'm going to poison it. Everyone pounce on it. Cool. Hey, I want that to stop summoning. All right, we're going to stun it. Hey, that thing's going to kill us. Stun it. Hey, those things over there, immobilize. You've got such a big toolkit, and you can afford to play some of those impact losses, and some of his later summons are actually pretty decent. There is the problem where his leveling up cards just kind of feel like they're equivalent level 1 cards, and I think that's just a design problem. Sorry, Isaac, but some of the Tinkerer cards are just not so great. So despite the fact that he has this great toolkit, just his advancement doesn't feel as rewarding to the point where I think we have to bring it down to it's fine. I would put it in it's fun because he has such a big fan club. The Tinkerer fan club is so loud. I think part of the Tinkerer fan club, I think part of why the Tinkerer fan club is so loud is because there's so many people like, hey, Tinkerer sucks, and that group is really loud, and they feel like we need to be loud, and like, hey, the Tinkerer's great, you're just doing it wrong, and I get that. But we're gonna say it's fine. Triforce. So the Elementalist is, it's fine. We're gonna leave it there. One of the things is it actually becomes really powerful once you get Vengeance, but when you get Vengeance, it just feels like now you become tedious. You just stop drawing attack modifiers, you're just killing all the normals. Say, hey, just focus on the elites, and then some scenarios, it just changes scenarios. But that said, all the elemental interaction is really fun. I would have actually limited it down to just 4 and not all 6. I don't like that the light and dark was being used, especially there's a story, I'm not going to go into it, but there's some lore that goes into what happens to Savas with light and dark, so I don't know why they even introduced it on the Elementalist. But I do think that it has some bit of fun. But like just the idea of, all right, I'm going to put fire into play, I'm going to put 2 wind into play, and I'm going to attack 5. Boom, nice level 1 card. And the Scoundrel's like, dude, I just did that by being next to the Brute. I'm like, oh, that's way less setup for the same attack and experience. And then you really start to think like, man, is this worth it? But there's so many cards that are fun. Simulacrum's personally one of my favorites. It's fun to get some of those dual cards that have cool effects, and he's got enough fun attacks that I do think ultimately it's one of the more fun classes to play. Sometimes it feels like you're doing a lot of effort for the same amount of damage, and sometimes you're just trivializing scenarios with a really dumb busted card, so we're gonna call it fine. Lastly, the Voidwarden. So the Voidwarden is fun. Personally, just taking over like, hey, enemy, what? You're doing this. Okay. Just walk enemies into traps and like laugh at them as they're like, oh no. Like walking enemies into stun traps, or some of the most annoying ones, is great. Watching them fight each other and just laughing at it. Using their own elements that they're infusing against them and to make their own attacks hitting their friends powerful. It's just one of those great classes. Not only that, but it's fun to actually be a team player and saying, hey, do you need to get over there fast? Here's a free move. Hey, I'm going to shield you. Boom. Also reposition you. Also, hey, here's some free attacks. And they're like, oh, thanks. I love my attack modifier deck. Like, dude, free attack with advantage. Have fun over there. It's just such a fun class to play. Ultimately, the Voidwarden is just really great in the ultimate team player. It has a little bit of a skill floor that's a little high, especially for Jaws, but I personally think that I'm not sure I would have put it into Jaws. Sorry, but I think it's one of those classes that once you kind of get used to it is super fun, and it's one of the more enjoyable ones to play. Any class that you think, hey, that's wrong, and I'll tell you why, let me know in the comments, because I will respond to it. I read every comment. What fun experiences have you had with any of these classes that were like, hey, this is so great? Let us know. And if you really liked watching the video, be sure to give us a like. It does really help. And a special thank you to all of our patrons. You guys are amazing. You guys keep our channel together. You guys are awesome, and I really appreciate you supporting us. You guys are amazing. Thank you. And thank all of you for watching.